This is Jocko Podcast number 112 with Echo Charles and me, Jocko Willink. Good evening, Echo.
Good evening.
I had a friend, and someday, when I can, I will tell you all about him. But until then, for now, I will say that I could not have asked for a better friend. Did he have faults? Sure. Don't we all? Now, most of his faults weren't really that big of a deal, but they were raw. Raw because he admitted to them all openly and directly and naively, to be honest. In a sort of pointed and heavy-handed self-critique, he would bare his weaknesses to the world and to me and to himself. And he would speak to me as if I had no faults. And I would try to explain otherwise, but he wouldn't listen. He would only judge himself. I'm too emotional, he would say. Not really, I'd tell him. I don't know how to talk to people right. Sure you do, I'd say. I make the same mistakes over and over and over again, he would say. We all do, I would tell him. I was better than him at some things. We both knew that. There were other things he was better at than me. But he always downplayed those things. And we both knew that too. When we were overseas, in a bad place, in a wretched place, he never complained. And I gave him every reason to. I put him in the worst locations with the greatest possible chances for failure and the highest probability for fire and fury and blood and death. But despite the enemy and the heat and the living conditions and the fear and the wounded men and the screams and the misery that was all around, he did not complain. It seemed at times that God himself was trying to test the limits of my friend. And it seemed like sooner or later, the bullets or the bombs would find him. But through some incomprehensible miracle, he survived through that deployment. Now, I make no claim whatsoever to understand why things in life unfold the way they do. In fact, I must say that many of the things I've seen in the world make no sense to me at all. Sometimes it's just utter confusion, no rhyme, no reason. Some of the things that I've seen have left me downright disgusted, jaded, repulsed, sickened by mankind and the awful and reprehensible things we are capable of. But there's another side to that. There's another side, and there are other people who do their best to redeem all the evil our souls are capable of. My friend was one of those people. After deploying with me and surviving that bloody and violent battlefield, my friend Like most of the guys in my old job, he volunteered to deploy again. I thought, and I told him prematurely and incorrectly, that the enemy was done. I told him that the war was all but over. I told him, just do the deployment and sit tight over there and play the game, and in a few months we'll be back and we can go surfing and we can play guitar and we can tell stories and we can cook steaks and we can surf some more. I told him we could carry on when he got home. That was the plan. It was a good plan. But the enemy gets a vote. And there was intense violence during that deployment for him as well. It was similar to what we had experienced together overseas, an aggressive enemy hell-bent on killing Americans, mixed in an urban environment with a terrified local populace. He told me that the enemy he was now facing wasn't as tactically skilled as the enemy we had faced, but he said that they were braver and more determined. That seemed to concern him a bit more. He seemed to feel the odds were that he would die. He sent me his last will and testament. He was not morose about it, just stating the facts. It's bad over here. The enemy is aggressive. Casualty rates are very high. The enemy has new weapons that are extremely capable. It didn't look good. I waited. I waited the long and completely powerless wait. One known mostly by mothers and fathers and wives and children that are old enough to understand. But a wait also made by the brothers at home that know the risk all too well. It was a long wait. At my friend's memorial service, his brother told a story. My friend had talked to his brother on the phone while my friend was on deployment. And my friend had explained to his brother in no uncertain terms the situation that my friend was in. The enemy was extremely hostile. The battlefield was chaotic. The attacks were frequent and furious. It was violence that my friend had not experienced before. This was war unleashed, and it seemed to be heading to an inescapable conclusion. And my friend's brother sensed this. Even through the phone, even thousands of miles away, as his brother, he sensed the darkness and the overwhelming finality of the situation. And he said to my friend, "Do you need anything from me? How can I help? Is there anything that I can do?" And my friend was quiet for a moment. And then my friend made one simple request. He said, "Pray for my men." Now, I want you to think about that. I want you to think about that level of selflessness, that level of faith, and of commitment and of care for others, that dedication in the face of fear and violence and death to, at that moment, put others before yourself. To do good. To be heroic and strong and brave, and yet at the same time to be humble and to be willing to sacrifice everything for your friends. That's a man. And I couldn't have asked for a better friend. The world can be a horrible place. It's filled with violence and treachery, and sometimes it seems that the legions of demonic powers have the upper hand in the battle between good and evil, and it can seem that all might be lost. And then we remember. We see the light, and for me, the light comes from the example of others. In this case, another person, another human being. My friend, who despite all the powers of darkness, stood up and rejected all that wickedness and proved that there is hope. And there is a path to light. And we can get on that path if we choose to do so, like my friend did. And that's life. At least as far as I can unravel the mystery, that's what I see. We are here, and the best thing we can do is stand against the darkness and try to spread light in the world. But that can be a very hard thing to do. Because life is not easy. In fact, it is said, and there are very few that would deny, that life itself is suffering. But there is a way. And there is a path. And today I have someone on the podcast for a second time that I think can help guide us down that path, away from darkness and toward the light. Dr. Jordan B. Peterson, welcome back to the podcast for a second time.